Welcome back to another video. I'm Ben and this is Katie, and together we are coaches at Reorigin, a program designed to help you reclaim your health by retraining your brain. And in this video, we're going to talk about a common question that comes up, which is something around POTS, that's postural orthostatic tachycardia, and how we can use things like somatic exercises to create some normality in the nervous system. So first of all, what is POTS for those who are not familiar with it? Well, POTS really stems from a chronic dysregulation in the autonomic nervous system. Bit of a mouthful there. Basically, what it means and what it feels like for a lot of people is that their heart rate might start beating a little bit irregularly, or they might experience fluctuations in blood pressure, which oftentimes occurs or feels like lightheadedness, a little bit of dizziness. This is a symptom that was really prominent for me when I was going through Lyme disease, and even for the couple of years that followed while I was recovering. This might have been one of the last symptoms to start to resolve. And in a way, it makes sense. Imagine that you have this nice calm lake, right? Everything is just going well. And then you sort of take a boulder and you drop it in the center. And all of a sudden, you're going to have all of these waves and these ripples that are creating a bit of chaos on the surface. And if you've ever been through any kind of stressful event in your life, maybe it was an illness, maybe it was a traumatic event, or even a bad injury, it can have a similar effect on the nervous system. It creates this sort of ripple effect that kind of lives in the cells in the system. And whenever we experience changes, oftentimes changes in things like temperature, or changes in state, going from sleeping to waking, that moment when you first wake up, or going from sitting to standing, or laying down to sitting up. When we experience these changes, it can really challenge that system, and it can sort of catalyze and bring us back to that state of dysregulation. And that's the experience that is also sort of become a diagnosis, but I really just think of it more as like a symptom itself is POTS, or this postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. So if dysregulation and dysfunction is what catalyzes this into motion, in this video, we're going to share some exercises that can establish normality, rhythm, and basically help us get back on the path to easing out of POTS. So Katie, I'm going to turn it over to you. She's really our somatic exercise specialist here. And we have a whole segment on these videos. If you go to our playlist in follow along exercises, you'll see a whole host of videos there. But yeah, just a little bit of explanation. What can we do to start to create better rhythms?
Yeah, I think a little bit of piece that I would like to add to what you were saying is that this is something where, especially when we're first starting out, when you're first starting to move again, with POTS, is that we definitely want these rhythms in place. We want this almost kind of like a predictability a little bit, because we want to really ensure to our nervous system that it's safe to move, right? So we'll do, we can do activities like very rhythmic, slow, mindful walking for short periods of time, even if you go down to the mailbox and back, or even rhythmic like yoga or qigong, tai chi. Those types of activities are really great. And again, we want to start very slow and really finding that rhythm in our movement. And the most amazing thing about the brain is that it's plastic and it can change, and we can build resilience, and we can start to regulate our nervous system, and we can teach our nervous system that it can recover when it does become dysregulated. So we start very, very small with those rhythmic movements, and then over time, we can start to mix it up a little bit with incremental training, which we talk about a lot in the program. And over time, we can gradually do a little bit less predictable movement practices. But ultimately, you're really gonna wanna start with those really short, small, very rhythmic, mindful walking, rhythmic breathing. So any sort of breathing that is going to keep you kind of on that even keel. So maybe you're inhaling for a count of 4, exhaling for a count of 4, and just repeating that. and just rhythmic, gentle movement. I do a lot of yoga and teach a lot of yoga, and a lot of what I do is those very rhythmic activities where you're just kind of moving in gentle ranges of motion back and forth. So you really want to start with a lot of those smaller, more mindful movements to just reiterate to nervous system, it's safe to move.
Yeah, exactly right. And if we look in nature, we see that healthy cycles are really punctuated by these rhythms, right? We have the heart rate has a systolic and a diastolic. Our breathing has an inhalation, exhalation. The day-night cycle, the also diurnal cycle of the day, the annual cycle of the seasons. So we're just surrounded by, on all different orders of magnitude, these different fluctuations. And the more that we can align ourselves with these natural rhythms, the better, especially when we're feeling that punctuated sort of dysregulation. So yeah, I think we've talked about this in another video as well when we talked about things like mind-body connection. But whenever you drop in and do anything slowly, it helps us maintain contact. And what we want to do, at least when we're starting to recover from POTS, is we want to try and avoid the extremes, right? We want to try and avoid going from 0 to 10, or from park to 60, right? Or 60 to park. We want to try and really exercise those gears in between and do so in a fluid way. And by doing that, we're actually sort of helping the gears of the nervous system to re-engage and to start to shift more fluidly.
Yeah, I love that. I just love that way of looking at it. So what that might look like in everyday life is, if you're at a place where walking isn't even an option yet, and you struggle with feeling that dysregulation from, laying down to sitting up, you might find some sort of rhythmic practice even just with that, very, very easy and gently, and the whole time you're really reiterating to your nervous system that you're safe. So if you're in a place where you're like, well, you guys, I can't even go for a walk yet, you can start to find rhythms in everything that you do throughout your day, which can be really helpful to start to build the muscle back up and build the safety with movement back in your nervous system.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point. I just want to linger on, especially that first one you mentioned about, posture, because for so many people, changes in posture, they sit down, they go to stand up, or they're laying down in bed in the morning and they go to sit up, and all of a sudden the heart rate goes up to 140 beats per minute. And so that is something that we can actually train, as you mentioned, and I think the key is really incrementally to gradually build up. And when you mentioned that, I thought, how would we do that sort of mechanically? And what came to mind is, maybe you lean against the wall, and maybe you have a few pillows, right? And so you allow yourself to kind of lean back to, just maybe you're sitting at 90 degrees and you lean back to like 80 degrees, or just like a little bit back, and then you come back up to full sitting. And then you go back a little bit further, and you really stay in something that we call, your sweet spot, or your training zone, not pushing yourself too far, but you make a practice of that. And then maybe you do just a little bit each day, and a little bit each day you go a little bit further, until eventually you're able to do several repetitions of, going back to 45 degrees and back up to sitting. And you're able to maintain that regulation. And so the last thing I'll say here is really important as you're doing this. Katie, you mentioned it already, which is really sending signals of safety back to your system. We really want to make sure that we're breathing, right? And relaxing. Because one of the things that's going to aggravate POTS is holding our breath. It's creating excess tension. So as we're doing this, you might notice that it's creating these subtle increases in tension at first, or increases in discomfort because we're changing our orientation. It feels a little bit uncomfortable, but we want to retrain the nervous system to know that it's okay. And one of the great ways that we can do that is we can tell ourselves that we're safe, but we can also relax our body. We can take a deep breath. We can make sure we're not holding excess tension, and we can really practice in that relaxed state. That will help it really sink in and will allow that progress to go beyond anything if we were just to try and like force it and just get stuck in these back and forth cycles.
I love it. And as so many of you guys have probably heard us say in the past, and we say this in the program, like the discomfort that you're feeling doesn't equal danger. So again, feeling the relaxation in your body, and also that cognitive reminder of just because I'm uncomfortable doesn't mean I'm in danger. And you can always like scan your environment for safety too, right? If you're doing this in your bed, looking around the room and being like, I'm in my bed. This is the safest place to be doing my incremental training. So finding that safety in body and in mind.
Yeah. Fantastic. All right, what experiences have you had with postural orthostatic tachycardia? What have you found to be helpful for you? Have you tried somatic exercises? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more tips and tricks and videos like this, just subscribe and also check out our newsletter at reorigin.com/newsletter.